Foreigners in China can change girlfriends several times a month, but Chinese men, in order to marry, need to buy a car, a house, and give tens of thousands of yuan as a dowry. Meanwhile, foreigners have already turned Chinese women into objects, swapping them for others when they get bored. And there are always some foolish women who are willing to get involved with foreigners. They think that foreigners, being from abroad, are romantic, caring, rich, and sophisticated, and that dating them is a great privilege, something that gives them status. They are willing to be puppies for them. But the truth is that in many cases these foreigners can't even get settled in their own country, and some can't even find a job. Still, when they come to China, some women expect them to buy cars, houses, and give dowries. Don't be fooled. These foreigners, if you arrange a date with them and go out to eat, they'll want to split the bill. So why are they so popular in China? The answer is simple. Many women have vanity and a desire to get closer to the West as their motivations. They fall for this illusion, thinking they're gaining something. And in the end, they become victims of an illusion. And now, with the massive influx of foreign women into the Chinese dating market, many Chinese women are quite upset and can't understand why Chinese men prefer these women. It's a big hypocrisy among Chinese women themselves. They complain about the competition, but at the same time they don't realize that many of these attitudes they're witnessing, like the search for foreigners, stem from their own unrealistic expectations and standards. What do you think about this?
Today, I went on a blind date and realized that competing with foreign women is impossible. It's not just about looks, accents, or the exotic fantasy that Chinese men create about them. It's about everything. The way they carry themselves, the confidence they exude, the fact that they don't have to play by the same rules as us. This competition is completely unfair. I know so many incredible Chinese women, educated, independent, and accomplished, but when it comes to choosing a partner, men seem to gravitate towards foreign women. Why? Because they don't carry the weight of expectations that we've had since birth. To them, relationships are a choice, not a means of survival. But for us, relationships are filled with obstacles, limitations, and unspoken rules. We are taught from a young age to be reserved, patient, and not to demand too much. Meanwhile, these foreign women have always been encouraged to prioritize their happiness and well-being above all else. The other day, a friend of mine who studied abroad told me about her relationship. She's dating a guy from a wealthy Chinese family, but he grew up overseas. Despite his family's wealth, he barely spends money on her. And what did she do? She simply decided that she doesn't want to spend her life with someone like that. Because she can. She grew up knowing that her value isn't tied to pleasing a man or securing a comfortable marriage. She knows what she wants and isn't afraid to walk away if it's not enough for her. Now, imagine if she had been raised in China. She would have probably convinced herself that he's a good catch, that she should be more understanding, that maybe he'd change over time. She wouldn't have felt the option to leave. And that's the difference. Chinese women are conditioned to settle, while foreign women are conditioned to expect the best. I remember another girl I met, raised in a traditional household. One day, I casually asked her if there was a boy she liked at school. She looked terrified, immediately hid behind her mother, and whispered, "Mom, why is this woman asking me such a weird question?" That's the level of fear ingrained in some of us when it comes to love and relationships. Some of us are trained to avoid the topic entirely, while others are taught to navigate the dating world with confidence and clarity. And so, we walk into blind dates already at a disadvantage. What can we offer? We're expected to be perfect wives, yet men prefer the ones who don't need to fit that mold. Because foreign women aren't desperate. They don't need to prove anything to anyone. And in the end, they are the ones who get chosen. And it doesn't stop there. The way we're taught to view love also puts us at a disadvantage. We're taught to be patient, to endure hardships, to believe that time will fix everything. But they're taught that if something isn't working, it's better to leave before it becomes a bigger problem. They don't romanticize suffering. While we spend years trying to be good enough for a man, they simply move on if they're not treated like a priority. And who do you think men prefer? The woman who begs to be valued, or the one who knows she has options? So yes, today, I finally understood that competing with them is impossible. Not because we're inferior, but because the system has been rigged against us from the start. We were raised to serve, to accept, to fight for attention. They were raised to live, to enjoy, to prioritize themselves. And unless we change this mentality, we'll keep watching men chase after them while we're left behind.
有一个中国老公，可好了，可好了，你想吃啥，他带你吃啥。
This beautiful Russian woman has 3,000 suitors, including wealthy billionaires and smooth-talking young men. But she chose a guy from Shandong, a poor young man with average looks, no money, no house, and no savings. She didn't even ask for a penny as a bride price, didn't want a wedding, and still decided to marry him. What makes this Shandong guy so special that he could win the heart of such a beautiful woman? Some say it's because she is a hopeless romantic. This episode is a story about the couple. Let me take you into the world of Shandong guy Lu Ning and Russian beauty Katyusha's international romance. Lu Ning is from Lini, Shandong. In 2016, he was still working hard to secure his future. While buying a car and house seemed distant, love quietly came into his life that year. Perhaps Lu Ning had once hoped for love, but he never imagined he would be pursued by a beautiful Russian blonde. That woman was Katyusha. Blonde hair, blue eyes, sharp features, a figure in beauty like a movie star. She has never lacked admirers in her life. Katyusha is not shy about this, and says that there are at least 3,000 suitors for her, with queues that would take 10 years to get through. But these suitors never expected that the goddess they worshipped didn't choose the rich businessmen or handsome young men. Instead, she fell for the poor guy, Lu Ning. The reason behind this choice might be something only Katyusha knows. But for Lu Ning, this was like fate. They quickly fell in love, and after 3 years of sweet romance, in 2019, Katyusha took Lu Ning to her hometown in Russia. Lu Ning had many plans for the future, all of them involving Katyusha. He deeply loved and appreciated his girlfriend, knowing that in the crowd of suitors, he had no advantages in terms of wealth or status. When they arrived in Russia, he hoped to build a better life for Katyusha. In 2020, they got married. Katyusha didn't ask for a bride price, nor did she care whether they had a car, a house. In her view, marriage is about the two of them. In Russia, there is no tradition of bride prices, and as for cars and houses, she believes that if the couple works hard together, they can achieve these things. However, as a woman, she also dreamed of having a wedding of her own, wearing a wedding dress, walking into the marriage hall with her love, under the blessings of friends and family. This beautiful Russian woman had 3,000 suitors, including rich businessmen and charming young men. But she chose the poor guy from Shandong, with average looks, no money, no house, no savings. Who would have thought that the pandemic would strike so suddenly? Before they could react, it already changed the rhythm of their lives. Lu Ning's plans to work and earn money came to a halt, and their life fell into a difficult situation. They had no income and could only stay home every day. By then, international flights were already suspended, and even returning to China was impossible. The only good news during that time was that in 2021, Katyusha became pregnant. Having a child gave Lu Ning new motivation. To give his child a good life, no matter how tough it got, he had to find a job and was willing to work through any hardship. As months passed, after their son was born, Lu Ning began his life of working day and night, leaving early in the morning and coming back home late at night. Meanwhile, Katyusha took care of everything at home. In daily life, Katyusha, as a housewife, was not any easier than Lu Ning. She woke up early to take care of the child, clean the house, and worked tirelessly without complaint. Unlike many people's stereotype of foreign wives as being careless, Katyusha was gentle, meticulous, and took care of everything herself. She also paid attention to raising their son in 3 languages. The reason for learning 3 languages came from the complexity of their household's language situation. Lu Ning doesn't speak Russian, and Katyusha doesn't speak Chinese. Their English was a bit awkward, and they communicated mostly through a translation app on their phones. Outsiders couldn't understand their conversations. But the two of them only needed a simple sentence or two to understand what the other was trying to say. This was a silent understanding that grew over time between two people who loved each other. For this reason, Katyusha made sure to teach their son 3 languages, hoping that as he grew, he would be able to communicate better with his parents and easily travel between China and Russia. This beautiful Russian woman, Katyusha, had 3,000 suitors, including rich businessmen and charming young men. But she chose the poor guy from Shandong, with average looks, no money, no house, no savings. Under Katyusha's patient guidance, their son, at 18 months old, could already say some simple words and had inherited the Russian talent for singing and dancing. Sometimes, he even danced along with programs on TV. On the outside, Katyusha might seem like a princess from a wealthy family, but in real life, she was extremely frugal and managed the household carefully. This was something that deeply moved Lu Ning. Their family rarely ate out. When they did, they'd take the leftovers home, heat them up the next day, and have another meal. Their life was tight, but Katyusha never complained. At times like this, Lu Ning felt especially guilty. He had hoped to give his wife and child a better life after marriage, but fate had played a cruel trick on them. Now their child was already 2 years old. Although Katyusha never voiced it, Lu Ning knew that the thing she regretted the most was not having a wedding of her own. He promised her that he would work hard and one day throw her a grand wedding in China, making Katyusha the happiest bride. Now that the pandemic was behind them, their lives and work had returned to normal, and the future still held infinite possibilities. They looked forward to a bright tomorrow. In the future, they hoped to have a beautiful baby girl to make the family even livelier and complete their perfect family. Their international marriage made many netizens envious. Having someone you love and fighting together for the family is truly a wonderful thing, and they hope all their future dreams come true.
很多人有个误
Many people believe that Chinese women are super popular abroad, especially in Western countries. But, honestly, this view is completely wrong. I myself have lived abroad, made many foreign friends, and saw firsthand how the perception of Chinese women is very different from reality. They told me that, for them, Chinese men are much easier to deal with. And I'm not just talking about charm. They are more tolerant, more dedicated, more willing to please. Chinese men, let's say, are easier to manage. Now we, Chinese women, don't have that advantage. A lot of people even think that because we are different, exotic in the eyes of Westerners, we would automatically be fascinating to them. But the truth, and I'll be direct here, is that Westerners don't show any special interest in Chinese women. They're not dazzled when they see us, they don't chase after us, and they don't do anything grand to win our hearts. And why does this happen? Let me explain. First, for them, what really matters is an emotional and intellectual connection. And, honestly, if a Westerner has never had direct contact with a Chinese woman, how would they know what's good about us? What do they know about us? They only know the stereotypes and limitations, but they have no idea of our qualities. As for the negative points, well, they know those well. Let's be honest here. The language barrier is one of the biggest challenges. Many of us don't speak English perfectly, and that already puts us at a major disadvantage compared to local women. And our habits, our culture, our food, even simple things like using an umbrella to avoid the sun or wearing a mask on the street. All of that can seem strange or even annoying to someone who doesn't know. How do we compete with that? Now, here's the part that really bothers me. Chinese men, on the other hand, are seen as much easier options for Western women. They are more patient, less demanding, more willing to make concessions. I've heard several foreign friends say that Chinese men have a more submissive vibe in relationships. And that, for some Western women, makes them easy targets to be guided into a relationship where everything revolves around what they want. So, in the end, while we, Chinese women, have to deal with a lack of interest, Chinese men become a tempting option for foreign women. They are more malleable, easier to please, and that makes them ideal for those looking for more control in a relationship. A cruel contrast, don't you think? What shocks me the most is the fact that we, who have always dedicated ourselves to family, education, culture, and building a solid life, end up losing in a competition where, often, authenticity and true connection aren't even considered. It's almost as if everything we have to offer comes second. This is how the reality unfolds. While we try to fit into a mold that Westerners don't always understand, Chinese men, with their more pleasing characteristics, become the preferred choice. And that's one of the reasons why everything is so much harder for us.
Foreigners bragging about how many Chinese girlfriends they've had. Why do Chinese women do this? Especially when they haven't received any benefits, right? Look, when we go to Southeast Asia, Chinese bloggers find girlfriends in places like Myanmar, Laos, and these girls ask for gifts, and these gifts are, at the very least, in exchange for money. The reason for the interest in money is understandable. Meanwhile, the girls who are deceived not only don't gain anything emotionally, but they also end up losing financially. What do you think causes this? On one hand, we have the culture of social circles. To succeed, a person needs to have a circle, right? Some women, especially those who are more educated, try to expand their social circle through relationships, thinking that it will guarantee more opportunities in the future. But they overlook the fact that a social circle is not defined by the people you know, but by how you become an essential part of that circle. Otherwise, the circle you build is meaningless. Another point is that our culture, compared to Western culture, is still at a disadvantage. That's why many women seek to associate themselves with this stronger culture to demonstrate their own value. We see many of these cases being exposed by Western bloggers. Rarely do these girls speak up, saying they've been deceived, because they prefer to believe that the man truly likes them. If someone tells them that this is not real, it is a huge pain for them. This pain is not about stubbornness, but about accepting reality. Accepting that, in fact, they have no value. In reality, in the modern world, a person's value should not be validated by society. It should be something we inherently possess from birth. But, it seems that in our society, everyone is still striving to achieve their life's value, and therefore, this society is full of absurd situations.
How much do you need to earn per year to marry a Russian wife? Hello everyone, I'm Li Wei, and this is the question I've heard the most in recent days. One guy even said something funnier. Now that China and Russia have visa-free entry, I'm going to Russia and will get 5 wives. This guy has lost his mind, right? I admit that Russian women do have characteristics that match the aesthetic preferences of Chinese people. Fair skin, blue eyes, blonde hair, they seem quite beautiful to us, right? But this is something you rarely see in China, so when you do, you think they're extremely beautiful. Actually, for those of us who've lived in Russia for a while, I think it's a bit different. There are many Chinese people living in Russia, and for every 10,000 Chinese people, only about 3 to 5 marry Russian women. The cultural difference is huge. Especially when it comes to young Russian women, the cultural gap is really vast. Our 5,000-year-old culture of taking care of parents, raising children, do the Russians understand that? No, they only know how to live life for themselves, doing whatever makes them happy. Now, expecting them to take care of you or your parents, that's unrealistic. They don't even take care of their own parents. Unless you're an orphan, but even then, I can't guarantee that your life will be good. Marrying a Russian woman doesn't cost much money, because they don't have much money there. But if a Russian woman is going to interact with a Chinese man, it's because he has some financial stability. If you say, I'm marrying you and we'll go back to my home in the countryside, and in the autumn we'll harvest corn, and she has to use the bathroom in the cold and freeze, that's not going to work. She certainly won't want to live like that. To be clear, most women who marry Chinese men aren't those who good Russian men would choose. If a good Russian man really liked her, she would choose to marry a Russian man because they have a cultural connection. The funniest thing is seeing a Russian woman holding a sign saying, I love China. I love Chinese men. I want a Chinese boyfriend. And we're thinking, oh, you love China. Then we all love you. They end up brainwashing us into believing that. I'm not saying Russian women are bad, but there are very few good ones. In the end, it's fine to make friends, but marrying and living together is a whole different story. So, think carefully before making a decision. Okay? Well, that's it. Bye.
What are the necessary conditions for a Chinese guy to marry a Russian girl? The qualities and flaws of Russian girls, I believe the Sihai people have the most authority to speak on, especially regarding the flaws. If you can accept those, then it won't be much of an issue. First, the main quality of Russian girls that everyone notices is their beauty. The girls on the streets are absolutely beautiful. Now, I'm not saying that Chinese girls aren't beautiful. We are also quite attractive. But Russian girls are internationally recognized as the most beautiful, especially in Moscow on summer Friday nights, where the streets are full of beautiful women, blonde with blue eyes, tall, lively, and outgoing, greeting strangers. The second positive point, if you can actually marry a Russian woman, is that there is no dowry. You can save a lot of money. You don't need a car, a house, or a huge savings account. After getting married, you can have a mixed-race baby who will be extremely smart. This child, wherever it's born, will have a great future. In Russia, with its vast territory and low population density, competition isn't so fierce. In China, people of Russian ethnicity are also present, and even in exams, they get bonus points. The required score is lower, and there's the benefit of having relatives abroad, which makes traveling and other matters much easier. Now, the flaws. To be honest, truly beautiful Russian girls typically won't be interested in Chinese men. There are many reasons for this, but the main one is cultural differences. Let me explain some points for you. There are qualities that Russian girls value, but we Chinese don't pay as much attention to. I think only I can speak about this. This is exclusive information. Folks, don't let those marketing profiles mislead you. In the summer, if you go to a bar in Moscow, you'll see many Russian girls speaking English. It's quite clear they are trying to make friends with European men. The real top Russian girls care a lot about things like chivalry and ceremony, things I personally struggle with. Specifically, for example, on any holiday, big or small, you need to prepare a gift and plan a date. Of course, Russian girls will also give you gifts. This sense of ceremony is deeply ingrained in them, and they have very high expectations when it comes to choosing a partner. Also, regarding chivalry, when you are dating these high-quality Russian girls, they really pay attention to things like opening the car door for them, holding their bag, and when you enter a restaurant in Russia during the winter, you have to open the restaurant door for her. Once, when I went out to dinner with a Russian girl, everyone knows that in the winter, when you enter a restaurant in Russia, you need to leave your coat on the coat rack at the entrance. After I left mine, I realized the girl was standing at the coat rack, not moving. The waiter reminded me, and then I realized I had to take her coat off and hang it up. These little actions, actually, most women wouldn't care about. But some of the top Russian girls really value chivalry and ceremony. Now, the second flaw, which is also the most crucial one. You notice that, on the streets, besides the beauty, all these girls are very tall. I, being 1.80 meters tall, walk on the street and see many women who are taller than me. This is determined by ethnicity and genetics, something we can't change. This means, guys, perhaps Russian girls aren't as physically compatible with us. It's not that it's impossible, but there is a difference. And this doesn't only apply to us Chinese, but even Russian boys who sometimes also face difficulties. For example, the famous tiger drink in Russia is very popular, but the boys are really out of options. During the day, they need to have a couple of shots, as it is made with over 60 types of Siberian forest plants, and it has a faint herbal aroma, being smooth and sweet. Most of my followers are guys born in the 80s and 90s who enjoy having a drink now and then. If you're into that, don't miss it. Well, these are the positive points about Russian girls. I believe anyone would accept them. These are qualities that everyone likes. Now, about the flaws, if you can accept them, you can go ahead and pursue a Russian girl. Now, I'd like to hear your point of view on the dilemma shown in the video. What do you think about it? If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. I'll see you in the next video.